Hello everyone and welcome to the BCM Game of the Month for November 2014. And this time the recording is coming to you live from Batumi, Georgia, where I'm acting as one of the coaches to the England youth squad at the European Youth Championships. As usual, when you're recording in a hotel room, there might be glitches in sound. For instance, my room is right next door to a rather large main road. But it's late in the evening and hopefully there won't be too much interference. Well, we saw a wealth of chess around the world in the last month. Firstly, there was the Millionaire Chess Tournament taking place in Las Vegas. Then we had the Isle of Man Tournament, Poker Stars Masters, won by Nigel Short. And there were a couple of very interesting friendly matches taking place in Holland. One between Anish Giri and Alexei Shirov, which resulted in a 4.5, 1.5 win for Giri. And the other one between Baadur Jobava, the creative Georgian Grandmaster, and Jan Timman, the veteran Dutch Grandmaster, who really faced a difficult challenge in this match. Not only did Jobava outrate him by 117 points, there was also the question of age. It's very difficult to play when you're much older than the opponent. They just seem to bring much more energy to the table. But of course, Timman was banking on his wide experience, not only of match play, but of play at the highest level of chess. So we pick up on this match. This is game 6, and white Jobava opened with c4. And Timman responded classically with the 4 knights variation. Perfectly good. A very solid way to proceed for black. And white now made the fundamental choice of playing g3. Obviously white can play e3. There are plenty of moves here. g3 I think you could say is the most popular and the main line. And black now has to choose how he wants to play this game. Does he want to play bishop b4, a very reliable move? Does he want to play the reverse Sicilian after d5? Or does he want to play a fairly popular move, bishop c5? Just settling for standard development and a nice solid position, hopefully, out of the opening. Well, bishop c5 is what Timman played. And white just got on with development. Bishop g2, black played d6, and now there came d3. You'd think, in this reverse Sicilian position, that white should be able to keep a slight edge. Just maintaining a flexible pawn structure, getting on with development, and eventually hoping to prove that the pieces on c5 and c6 are exposed, for instance to advances by the white pawns. Timman, for his part, well, he knows this is a fairly modest system to begin with, and he just settles for h6 to start off with, keeping the bishop out of g5, and after a3, just a6. Again, preserving the option of bishop a7 when white plays b4. And that's exactly what happened. Well, with colours reversed, if white played in this way that black is playing against a Sicilian, you'd have to say it looks pretty spineless. But with black, when you're trying to equalise, this is a reasonable way of playing. And both sides castled. And normal play here continues with moves like e3, followed by perhaps bishop b2, queen d2, and white is looking for the best moment to advance his pawns. Play might proceed, bishop e6, and now white can confidently go bishop b2. In the nollies, if black plays d5, which I think is probably what black would like to do, but not here, white wins a pawn very comfortably by just taking on d5 and then taking on e5 after e4. So after e3, black would just have to settle for a developing move, and white would continue with bishop b2, queen d2 as advertised. But in true original style, Jobava plays a move I don't think Timman could have expected, bishop out to e3. And indeed this looks rather dubious because, well, can't black just take the bishop and mess up white's pawns? Well, yes he can. And I think Timman now missed an opportunity to get a good position by playing the immediate knight g4. And if white protects the pawn with queen d2, the idea is to go f5, gaining space. Okay, white can put the knight in on d5, but after rook f7, I personally think the black's position is perfectly reasonable. But Timman, on that day, decided to go bishop e6. Again, standard development. White went knight to h4, and the point of this is to prevent d5. As if black mistakenly makes that move, white now has the crushing rook takes f6. That is the main point of knight h4. Although, of course, going back, white is also thinking about knight f5. So black played knight to g4, and now another interesting and rather careful move by white. Queen to c1. White wants to keep his queen protected in this position, and we'll see why perhaps a little later on. Obviously white could have gone queen to d2. Black plays much as the game. White drops his knight back to d1, and now f5. This might be a little better for white, but I think queen c1 is a bit better, as we'll see. And the point of it is that after queen g5, white again plays in a very original style. He plays bishop takes c6, damaging black's pawn structure. Another very unstereotyped move, and now pawn up to e4. And it's here we see the reason why white needed to keep his queen protected. So white has now got a grip on the centre, and black doesn't really want the queens coming off in this position, as it leaves white in charge with more space and perhaps more chances to press black's position. So Timman keeps the queen on with queen h5, and white plays h3. Another very, very dangerous looking move, because having surrendered the light square bishop, you think that the white king could somehow be pressurised. But white has calculated this all out very nicely, and he continues with his really original chess throughout the game. So seeing no entry point on the king side, Timman breaks in the centre with d5. But he's overlooked, or at least underestimated, the following excellent exchange sacrifice, as white takes on d5 and now crunches in with rook takes f6. A powerful move which gives up the exchange, yes, but white in return is getting this very, very powerful central pawn in return, and also tremendous play for his knight. And this, in the end, throws the black position into complete chaos. So after he takes d5, Timman retreated with bishop d7, and now white brought his queen up to a much more influential square on e3. And now black played queen to g5. Possibly a mistake, but I think Timman was really feeling the pressure at this point. Now what else does he have? Well, he can try king to g7, and then white just builds up with rook f1. Black plays rook fe8, let's say, and now queen to f2. And when black protects f6, white hits again with knight e4. This leads immediately to a winning position for white. Some commentators suggested that f5 was the best move, and now I think again white plays rook f1. f4, causing some disruption, again was assumed to be best, but now queen f3. White happily exchanges the queens in this position because he knows he can activate the knights to the maximum with knight to d4. Not only does white have very powerful knights, black's pawns are ripe for the plucking. Note that black has 5 isolated pawns here and a set of double pawns to boot. So this is a really difficult position for black. I mean, I don't think he can hold this. If he puts his rook in on e3, we take on f4. Black takes on h3, and now knight to e4 with serious pressure. Well, Timman didn't like that, and he played queen to g5. And white put his queen in on c5. Black played f5, but unfortunately this had the result of losing the pawn on c7. Black had to protect his bishop, and now the knight on h4 gets back into the game after knight f3. As you can see, black has issues with his pawn centre. Queen h5 was answered by knight takes e5, and you can see the whole position's falling apart here. Black is losing his pawns. The knight dropped back to c4. Well, white had an equally good move here with queen to c5. That was also good, and the point of it is that after rook c8, white goes knight c6. And as is usual, as is customary, when great players get a winning position, they go on to win it. So from now on, Jobava's technique is completely flawless. He brings the rook on a1 into the game. He drops the queen back to f4, And with further damage to the pawn structure imminent, Timman decides to go all in with rook takes e2 check. But after knight takes e2, queen takes e2 check, rook f2, queen takes d3, white consolidates with knight e3. And now he's not only a piece up, he's got distinct pressure against the black king, and knight takes f5 is in the offing. So black cannot save the position. Rook e7 was answered by knight takes f5. Okay, black takes on d5, but white's king gets to a very safe position, and after rook d7, queen g4 check, Timman resigned. So a very confident and entertaining display by Jobava, who eventually went on to win the match 4.5, 1.5. Credit to both players for an excellent and entertaining display.